Your objective for lesson 9 is I will build and write fractions greater than one whole using unit fractions. So we're going to be working with fractions, but we're going to have fractions that are more than one whole. So we may have 2 or 3 circles when we're working with fractions today because we're working with fractions that are bigger than one whole. Okay, so I brought 2 oranges for lunch today, and I cut each one into fourths so that I could eat them easily. So we're going to draw a picture on your board, and we're going to show how I cut both of my oranges. So if I cut both of them into fourths, you have to ask yourself, how many parts is each orange going to have? So go ahead and draw your 2 oranges, or my 2 oranges, on your board, and you're going to be making them both have fourths. So each orange is going to have 4 equal parts. So you're just going to break it apart into 4 equal parts for both oranges. When you're ready to check that, you may push play. Okay, so you should have these 2 circles on your board, both cut into 4 equal parts. The next part says, I was so hungry I ate 1 whole orange and then 1 piece of the second orange. So now we have to shade in the pieces that I ate. So on my first orange, right here, that I have 4 equal parts, I ate all of that orange. And then on my second orange, I ate 1 piece of that orange. So on your board, I want you to shade in the parts that show what I ate out of both oranges. And push play when you're ready to check it. Okay, so on this orange, you shaded in all parts because I ate all of that orange, or I ate all of that orange. And then on the second orange, you should have just shaded in 1 part because I only ate 1 piece of that orange. So now I want you to write what fraction of the orange did I eat from this orange, and then what fraction of this orange did I eat. I want you to write those 2 fractions on your board beside each one of your circles so I can see the fractions that show what I ate from both oranges. Okay, so out of this one I ate 4 fourths because there were 4 equal parts and I ate all of the orange, so that means I ate all 4 pieces. And then this one there were 4 pieces but I only ate 1 piece, so on this circle or this orange I only ate 1/4 of the fraction. So now what we have to do is we have to take both of these fractions and put them together to show how many pieces I ate in all. And when we're working with fractions that are greater than 1, you may say this has 4 parts and this has 4 parts, so our denominator, which is the bottom number, is going to be 8. But see, that's not true when we're working with fractions. Our bottom number is always going to be how many parts the whole has. So when we're looking at both of these circles, each one of these circles has 4 equal parts. So our denominator is still going to be 4. You just always have to keep in mind that the denominator is how many parts there are in the whole. So in both of these wholes, in both of these oranges, there were 4 equal parts, so that's where our denominator of 4 comes from. Now the top number is always going to be the part that we're looking for, and in this case we're looking at the parts that were shaded, or we're looking at the parts that show how much of the orange I ate. And I know that I ate 4 pieces on the first orange and I ate 1 piece on the second orange, so I ate 5/4 of the oranges. And yes, we've got a bigger number on the top than on the bottom, but that's what we're calling a fraction that's more than 1. So 5/4 is a fraction that's more than 1, and you can see with our models up here that it is more than 1 because I have 2 different wholes. I just don't want you to get confused in this lesson and start changing your denominators to how many pieces there are all together in both wholes. Just please remember that our denominator is how many parts there are in each whole, and we know that there's 4 here and 4 here, and the numerator just deals with the part that we are talking about based on the question. So this is what we're going to be working on today. Okay, so now we are going to work on a new problem. And on your board, we're going to show 5/4 as a number bond of unit fractions. So we're going to be using number bonds again, and we're working with that fraction 5/4 that we just figured out for the oranges that I ate. And the top of our number bond is going to be 5/4. And we're just going to show how many unit fractions is 5/4 made of. And this is what you're going to be drawing on your board, because this is kind of just like what the orange showed. I had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different pieces of the orange that I ate. So we know that 5/4 is made up of 5 different 1/4s. So on your board, make sure you're drawing this number bond to show what 5/4 really looks like when we're breaking it apart into unit fractions. Now we're going to work with 5/4 again, but we're going to break it into two different parts. First part is going to show the fraction of one orange that I ate, and then the second part of the number bond is going to show the fraction of the other orange that I ate. So you've got to remember that in the first orange that I ate all 4 pieces, so we had to break that up into 4 different parts, and I ate all 4 pieces, so whenever we were looking at it, I had all parts shaded. So the first part of our number bond is going to represent this first orange that I ate. So whenever we're looking at this, we know that it has 4 equal parts, and since I ate all 4 parts are shaded. So on your board, our number bond is going to have 5/4 at the top, because that's the whole that we're talking about. And this first part of the number bond is going to represent the first piece, or the first orange that I ate. And we know that I ate all 4 pieces out of that orange, so the fraction that you're going to be writing on your number bond is 4/4. We know that the second orange was cut up into 4 pieces as well, but out of that orange I only ate 1 piece. So we only had to shade 1 part of that fraction. So now on your number bond, you are writing the fraction that shows the part of the second orange that I ate. So I want you to go ahead and add that to your board on your number bond. And it should have been 1/4, because we knew out of this second orange I only ate 1 piece out of all 4 pieces. So we know that 5/4 is made up of 4/4, which is 1 whole, and then another 4th, which is just 1 piece out of the second whole. Okay, so this next one says I bought 2 small pizzas for lunch today. It's not really talking about today, it's just a problem. And it says that I cut each one into halves so that I could eat them quickly. Draw a picture on your board to show how I cut my 2 pizzas. So we're going to have 2 pizzas, and each one is cut into halves. So you know that when we're working with halves, we're working with 2 equal parts. So make sure that both of your circles has 2 equal parts. And then it says that I was so hungry that I ate 1 whole pizza, and then I ate 1 piece of the second pizza. So you're going to have to shade in the parts to show what I ate out of both pieces. So go ahead and do that on your board and push play when you're ready to move on. Okay, so we've got 2 whole pizzas. This part I ate the whole pizza, so you had to shade both parts, and out of the second pizza I only ate 1 piece, so we're just shading 1 part. On your board you also need to write down the fraction that shows this pizza that I ate and the second pizza, what did I eat from that. So you're going to write 2 different fractions that show what I ate from both pizzas. Make sure you push and pause when you do that. So I know that out of this pizza I ate 2 halves, so that's going to give me 2 over 2 because I ate all of it. And out of this pizza I only ate 1 half. So once again we're going to have to take both of these fractions and put them together to make a fraction that's bigger than 1. And whenever we're writing fractions that are bigger than 1, you have to, your denominator is not going to be 4, because I know that there's 4 parts altogether, but our denominator is how many pieces each whole has. And we know that each whole has 2 pieces, so our denominator is going to be 2. And our numerator, the top number, is going to stand for how many pieces I ate in all. And we know from this fraction or from this pizza and this pizza that I ate 1, 2, 3 different pizzas. So on your board, you're going to be writing our fraction that's bigger than 1 as 3 halves, because I ate 3 pieces out of all of the pizzas that we had. Okay, so now we're going to take our 3 halves and we're going to make a number bond of just unit fractions. So at the top of your number bond, it needs to have 3 halves. and we need to know how many unit fractions is 3/2 made of. And we know based on the pieces that we just looked at that there were 3 different parts that made up the 3/2. So we're going to have 1/2, 1/2, and 1/2. And we know that when we have 3 1/2s, that gives us 3/2. So on your board, you got to make sure that your number bond looks like this. Now we're going to take the number bond and we're going to make it have 2 different parts instead of 3. One part is going to show how much of the first pizza that I ate, and the other part of the number bond is going to show how much of the second pizza that I ate. So just like the ones that we just did. So the top of your number bond should have 3/2, and this time your number bond is going to have 2 parts. First part's going to show how much of the first pizza, and the second part of the number bond is how much of the second pizza that I ate. So go ahead and put that on your board. So one part's going to have 2/2 because that's what I ate out of the first pizza, and the second part is going to be 1/2 because that's how much I ate out of the second pizza. Okay, we're going to go ahead and take out our problem set. So if you want to get that out and get that ready before you move on. Okay, so all of these have it all shaded in for you. So we're just looking for the fraction that is shaded. And remember that we're working with fractions that are more than one whole. So our fractions are going to have a bigger numerator than the denominator. The first sample, you can see that each whole is broken apart into halves. So if I were to label each part on these fractions, each unit would be 1/2, so the fractional unit is 1/2. We had to figure out how many parts were shaded, and there were 2, 4, 5 parts shaded, so that's where the 5 comes from. And the fraction that shows what is shaded is 5/2, because once again, the denominator is going to stand for how many parts each whole is broken apart into, and then the numerator is going to stand for what was shaded. So when we're looking at these shapes right here, I see that there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 parts in both shapes. So the fractional unit for each one was 1/8. The parts that were shaded, there's 8 shaded here and 7 shaded here. So that tells me that 15 parts are shaded. And when we're writing down the fraction that is shaded, we have 15/8 because there are 8 parts in each shape, and there were 15 parts shaded in all. So when we're looking at C, each whole has 6 different parts. So if I were to go in here and label each one of these little squares, each one would be 1/6. There are 6, 12, 13, 14 different parts that are shaded. So 14 goes in this part of the chart. And the part that is shaded as a fraction is 14/6. When you look at D, each whole has 5 different parts. So if I were to label each one of these rectangles in the shapes, they would each be 1/5. There are 5 parts shaded right here and 1, 2, 3 parts shaded right here. So that's going to give me 8 parts that are shaded all together. And the fraction that shows what is shaded is 8/5. We move on to E. Each one of these diamonds have 4 equal parts. So if I were to label each individual part, they would be labeled 1/4. There's 4 shaded here, 4 shaded here, and 1 part shaded right here. So that's 9 parts that are shaded in all. And the fraction that shows what is shaded is 9/5, and that 5 right there is wrong. So let me change it to 4 because there are actually 4 equal parts in each one of these shapes. Out of these 3 shapes at the bottom, each one has 3 parts. So if I were to label each one of them with unit fractions, I would be labeling them as 1/3. There's 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different parts that are shaded. And so our fraction that shows that what is shaded is going to be 7/3. Okay, on the back, it says estimate to draw and shade units on the fraction strips and then solve. And what it means by solve is you'll have to tell what it is equal to. So as the sample, they have 5/3, and the way that we write 5/3 using numbers is with a 5 on the top as the numerator and a 3 on the bottom as the denominator. And since the 3 is the denominator, we know that our whole is going to have 3 different parts. And since we're working with fractions that are bigger than one whole, we're going to have 2 different wholes for this one. So on the first one, they had each part labeled as 1/3, and all 3 parts in the first one was shaded. The second one, they had 3 parts, each one labeled 1/3, and 2 parts were shaded because altogether there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 parts shaded, and that's where we get 5/3. So when we're moving on to A, it says 8/6. So the fraction that we're writing is an 8 as the numerator and a 6 as the denominator. Whenever you are breaking it apart, you have 6 different parts in both wholes because that's where our denominator, that's where we get our denominator. The denominator is how many parts there are in the wholes. You should be labeling each part as 1/6 to make sure you label that if you don't have that labeled. And then you are shading in 8 parts total. So you've got 6 parts shaded on this first hole, and then you've got 2 parts shaded on this second hole. Okay, so for part B, it says 7/4. So the way that we write that as a fraction with numbers, we have 7 as our numerator and 4 as our denominator. On your rectangles that were on your paper, each one should have been broken into 4 equal parts because our denominator is a 4, and that always tells us how many equal parts a whole is going to have. You should have labeled each part on your rectangle as 1/4 because that would be the unit fractions. And then all together you should have had 7 parts shaded. So the first rectangle, all 4 parts are shaded. And on the second rectangle, you should have shaded 3 parts because we know that when we have 4 and 3 together, that makes 7. And that's where we get 7/4 from. On C, they have gone ahead and wrote the fraction using numbers. You have just got to write it like they did on A and B. So if we have 6/5 right here on the line, you should have wrote 6/5. And then on the rectangles, we know that since 5 is the denominator, each rectangle is going to have 5 equal parts. You should have labeled each part as 1/5, and altogether you should have shaded 6 parts total because that's where our numerator 6 comes from, and that's where we get 6/5. So on the last one for part D, we have 5 halves. So whenever you're writing that, it should be 5 halves, not 5 twos. So make sure you didn't put down 5 twos because we know when we have a denominator of 2, that means halves. So on your rectangles, you had each one broken into 2 different parts. This time we don't just have 2 rectangles because if I only had 2 rectangles, you can see that if I had this one covered up, I would only have 1, 2, 3, 4 different parts, and our fraction up here has a numerator of 5, so I'm going to have to shade 5 different parts. That's why we had to draw another hole for this problem. So each of the 3 rectangles were cut into 2 different parts, so they show that they have halves. Each different unit fraction was labeled as 1/2, and you should have shaded 2 whole rectangles and then just 1 part of the second rectangle. Then moving on to number 3, it says Mrs. Jollick baked 2 pans of brownies. Draw the pans and estimate to partition each pan into 8 equal pieces. So we're going to have 2 rectangles here, and both rectangles are going to have 8 parts because each pan of brownies had 8 equal pieces. So make sure you're drawing that on your paper. Okay, so you could have had a long rectangle that had 8 parts, or you could have had your rectangle look like this where you had 4 on the top and 4 on the bottom. Either one would have been correct. Part A says Mrs. Jollick's children gobbled up 10 pieces, so that's why we need to shade in all 8 of these pieces and then 2 pieces out of the second pan of brownies, because that shows that we have 8 and 2, and we know that 8 and 2 make up 10. Okay, so for part B, it says write a fraction to show how many pans of brownies her children ate. Shouldn't say pans because we know that there's only 2 pans, so it's really how many pieces of the brownie did they eat, how many pieces of the brownies. So we know that for the first pan that there were 8 pieces, and all of those pieces got 8. And we know for the second pan that there were 8 pieces and only 2 pieces got 8. So we know altogether there were 10 pieces. And the denominator of our fraction is going to stand for how many pieces each whole had. And we know that in both pans there were 8 pieces of brownies. And we know that 10 pieces got 8 altogether. So 10/8 of the brownies were ate by her children. So the fraction that I was looking for was 10/8. Okay, so now we're going to be moving on to the exit slip. Whenever you are finished with it, make sure you bring that to me so we can go over it.